Hi, everybody. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. My name is Maria, and welcome to Mosaic Maria channel. So, today I just wanted to talk just a little bit about Anne Heche and wish her well and send prayers and just give a few thoughts that I have rolling around my head. Um, and talk about the news a little bit and things that I don't understand. Just put it out there to think about. Okay. A lot of people are giving well wishes to Anne Heche, as they should, as anybody would do. For those of you who don't know who Anne Heche is, shame on you. Go find out. Do your research. Veteran actress. Um, really, I was introduced to her back in the soap opera days of the late 80s, early 90s. Um, it wasn't really a soap opera I watched, but I started hanging around um, at work some people that were watching Another World, and uh, Anne Heche played twins. And I didn't realize that at first. I had to get filled in about Another World, what it was about, because it wasn't my show I watched. So I soon found out that Anne Heche was an Emmy Award-winning actress who was really playing dual roles, like a twin that was very conniving and I wouldn't say evil twin. I would say conniving or mischievous and uh, adventurous in a way that wasn't always good. And then a twin that was more conservative, polite, whatever, and sweet and nice and everything sweet, right? So then I really didn't see Anne Heche until later in movies. Um, And then she really became popular in the late 90s with some big films. Like everything was going her way. She was becoming a top, um, I hate to categorize like A-list, B-list, or anything like that. She was an A-lister all the time as far as I'm concerned, but in Broadway theater, she was doing production, she was making movies, like writing movies. She geared towards, in the late 90s, movies she was mostly supporting actress, lead supporting actress, a lot of big roles. And she probably became best known for I Know What You Did Last Summer, like a cult favorite. Um, she did the remake of Psycho, which I thought was going to be a really tough one to tackle, but she did kind of veer towards movies. She has always that spoke to abuses and abuses in the system. So we see her in the movie, I think it's called John Q with Denzel Washington, where he is fighting to get his little boy heart transplant. She plays the badass kind of um, hospital administrator that can't allow his child to get a transplant because they don't have the insurance. And you want to hate this woman, but you see her character evolve so beautifully in the movie. Excuse me, she was in Volcano with Tommy Lee, where there was a lot of fire and stunt people, and she had to learn to run away from fire a lot and be close to it, be very close to it. And she was also in the movie 6 Days, 7 Nights with Harrison Ford, which was probably the top of her career, Volcano, in that she was in a movie with Johnny Depp, Donnie Brasco, which was an excellent movie. I mean, she's just a slew of movies. But she veered towards movies where she played women that were hard to like, that we wanted to not like. On Gracie's Choice, Lifetime TV movie, it was about a mother of five who was drug addicted and mentally ill, who really just used her children and her mother in the system and was never going to be a mother to her children. She was always going to be addicted and and all the things that go with addiction, manipulation, lying, stealing, and uh, nodding out, not being there for her children. Um, so moving, running away, that kind of thing. And So she loses all the rights to her custodial rights to her children, and they go to her oldest daughter, who has really been the mother all along. Um, awesome movie. She won an award for that. Um, and everybody loved to hate her, but you also sympathized with her sickness. Sympathized with it. She has this rare ability to really play with the character of a woman that is abusive and a woman that is abused, and show those child wounds in the adult, how they manifest in the adult in negative ways, and then try to redeem herself over and over again. I've always seen Anne Heche as a phoenix that has crashed and burned many times, but has always risen like a phoenix out of the ashes, even more evolved and beautiful. Now, Anne has struggled with addictions and mental illness her whole life and being misunderstood. She does not like to be labeled. So she had always been with some very, say, high profile men dating when she was an actress, excuse me, in the 90s. And trying to think of some people she went out with that we would know or tap off of. I don't think I can. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Do some research. She went out with men that were considered very talented, up there in celebrity, let's say. Okay? Popular. Um, but then she suddenly fell in love with Ellen DeGeneres. And then she went through one fireball crash after another because the tabloids just took her apart. The paparazzi chased her everywhere, and I believe the paparazzi was chasing her when she was in the crash this weekend. But I'll get to that in a minute. Um, Anna's always been a truth teller. She has no filter, and sometimes people with challenges mentally just share too much, or they don't edit, and sometimes they over edit, and if you're under the influence of a drug or whatever, sometimes you really don't edit and you do share too much, and um, so she has struggled with alcohol and drugs, and she had this beautiful relationship with Ellen, and the gay community accepted her, and you're one of us, and she did more advocating for the gay community, for women's rights, male and female, LGBTQ plus, without needing a label, without having to identify as being gay. She always said, "I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I fell in love with Ellen." She always said she also loved men. Now, when people tried to pigeonhole her into being bisexual, she said, "No, I don't need a label. I'm just me. And I think everyone should just be you." Um, that is the most evolved we can be, is stop putting these labels on ourselves. Am I bisexual? Am I polymorphous? Am I gender fluid? Am I gay? Am I this? Am I that? She realized this from her own childhood, from growing up in a household that labeled themselves Christian. And her mom was like a top counselor, minister worker for James Dobson, Focus on the Family. Like, we're talking real right-wing Christian. Her father was a youth and choir minister in church, and he led a double life. He was living on the down low. He was a gay man, one of the first men diagnosed in the United States in 1983 with AIDS. And he died of AIDS at 45 years old in 1983. The family had a really hard time coming to terms with that he was gay. They led this double life, but they really eventually realized it. Anne realized it immediately. She knew it right away. she understood that her father was hiding something, that he was closeted, and she was abused by her father from the age of 3 to 12. Now, her claim is that she uh, did get herpes from her dad, and she had herpes in childhood, young childhood. Children don't get herpes usually, the kind of herpes she had, um, unless something is happening. But current to this day, currently, her one surviving sister out of five children and her mother are saying that's not our real. We don't believe that. We don't believe that happened. We believe Anne thinks that happened, but it didn't happen. What I want to say about abuse is it happens behind closed doors, and that when you're in a family, a parent can be different to each child. Each child has a different parent, though you share the same parent. You have a different history, a different you have shared history moments in a family, and then you have your own personal moments with a parent, and a parent will do to one child what they know they can get away with, and they will never try that with another child. So it can happen that you can grow up in a family of 5 or 6 kids, excuse me, and all 5 kids can experience their mother or father as sick or abusive. Or you can grow up in a family where 2 or 3 kids can say this happened and the rest of them say it didn't. Excuse me. When we take into consideration the age differences and phases that happen in family, and as parents develop and the stresses that come into life, we all have different parents. We share different parents in a home. So I believe what Abigail, her sister, was saying is Abigail Heche was saying is uh, I could see how that could be the deduction that Anne came up with, and that what she looked at is her dad was always a Christian. They know now that he led a double life. He had a kind of schizophrenic life where he had great delusions of grandeur. He believed he was more really important in business, and he would go make these big business moves and spend all the money and brag about it, and the family would end up destitute and even homeless. And um, I don't know why Anne's mother refused to look at those things happening as little flags going up. But at any rate, when Anne was born, she was the youngest, and her older sister in infancy, Cynthia, had already died at 3 months of a congenital heart uh, problem. So she was coming into a family where the older sister had already died. And then her brother that she was close to tragically died at 18 years old, just an hour or so before he was supposed to graduate. And Anne knew that he had been depressed the same way Anne knew. And the family kind of knew something's not right with the father, something's going on. They couldn't pinpoint it. Um, they had a lot of unspoken truths in their family, a lot of denial, a lot of just appeasing, a lot of if we just keep going to church, if you just keep being the choir minister dad, and if I just keep working for James Dobson and focus on the family and being a Christian counselor, and all of our kids show up at church, well, okay. And no, 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 no. My son would never kill himself. He wouldn't crash his car into a tree head on. because I talked to the youth pastor, and the youth pastor assured me my son knew Jesus and he would never kill himself. No, no, no. My husband couldn't have been gay from homosexuality because he was the youth pastor. He was a choir minister, pastor, director. No, and we had a good relationship sexually. And I have listened to people interview Anne over the years, like very learned men, like Larry King, God rest his soul, and say, well, in your book, Anne wrote a book called Call Me Crazy after she broke up with Ellen for very valid reasons. Their lives were going in two different directions. Yes, she fell in love with a man, and that's what the gay community couldn't get over. They were like, she was a poser. We let her into our group. She was one of us, and she advocated for us. She marched on Washington for us. She moved us more forward than we ever did. And now she's with a man, turncoat, right? And I mean, you would have thought she murdered someone. It was just, it went on forever. The hate, the canceling. She was one of the first women canceled since Marilyn Monroe and Judy Garland and Frances Farmer. These were women in Hollywood that weren't going to just sit down and shut up. And their sexuality was in question, their mental health was in question, and they were canceled because they were loose cannons. They would say the truth. Anne was so canceled. And I mean, her acting was, I think, beautiful. And I think poignant and very well. And she was always nominated, and she won many awards. And yet people didn't receive her after she was in the relationship with Ellen for 3 years. A lot of people said, they're getting too, no, right? And then, so she had like $10 million contracts that just dropped her. Then, in her words, which she's never really spoken of much, but in her podcast with Heather Duffy, who does the Better Together with Annie and Better Together with Annie and Anne and Heather podcast. It has to rhyme. I always say it backwards. They really tackle all the hard issues, and Heather has answered the questions that people have asked her the questions to answer. And in all of that, in all of the hate that Anne received, she never lashed out at anyone. She only evolved to a higher level and kept raising her vibration and saying, you be you do you, I'll do me. And I wish you well. And love to you and respect and gratitude. Always raising the bar. When people shot low, she went high. And people talked about she was schizophrenic, she was bipolar, she was delusional, she was a drug addict, she was on ecstasy. She had taken one ecstasy during the whole breakup, ended up in a desert, at a strange house, took a shower, started watching TV. They dragged her into the hospital, and she wrote a book, Call Me Crazy, because people were calling her crazy from the moment she got together with Ellen, and more so when she broke up with Ellen. Now, a lot of really heavy-duty, famous gay activists and journalists that were the hardest on her have come forward in the last few years and written to her open letter apologies and said, Anne Heche, I apologize. What were we thinking? What were we thinking? That you had to be gay and stay with a woman and be a lesbian, and if you then were with a man, you weren't a lesbian? And And why were we making you identify with anything? Why didn't we understand gender fluidity or non-binary or not identifying, just not wanting a label? And people have apologized. And so she's been more open to receive and speak out on not wanting labels. So she's been married. She has a 20-year-old son. She has a 13-year-old son. She had a relationship with two men, very stable, long-term relationship. She has mothered her children. And and I hate to see what TMZ is doing to her and Entertainment Live and people, and then how it's starting to shape up on YouTube and Facebook and social media and Instagram. A viewer, a friend, sent Anne and Heather some I think it's refined vodka, and told them instead of just drinking wine, if you want to live forever, you should drink vodka and wine. Okay, they did a podcast about living longer drinking vodka and wine. Um, she was not drunk on the broadcast. They took the podcast down because it was showing them drinking, but I saw that podcast before it was deleted on Friday, and I just think that I think Anne really played it up, and she naturally slurs, and she has a lot of movement disorder. She does. I'm going to try to. She does this a lot. Hands. She gets really close to people. She's been doing that for years. I don't know why, but that is Anne Heche. She's very in your face, want to touch you, be around you. Minus the ecstasy, this is the way she is. And I've always thought in her acting roles where she has to be really still, she really is acting because her natural posture and movement of her body, or her cadum or whatever of her rhythm of her body is to move and to prop herself up and to keep moving and talk fast. And some could see her as having a tic, a movement disorder, or maybe side effects to uh, psychiatric medication. So there's a lot of things that could be in the mix, but she's very attentive, she's focused, she's articulate, she's brilliant woman. And I saw her in a Tyler Henry uh, um, Hollywood medium. I had to think for a minute. What did he call himself? Hollywood medium, Tyler Henry. Uh, Such an emotional reading where she was able to hear from her brother who died tragically, who she loved so much, and she believed it was suicide. And Tyler Henry didn't know anything about this, so he claims. And her brother came forward and validated everything that um, their life was unfair. It was unfair, and that Anne at the time was doing what she needed to do, which was going across this bridge, traveling back and forth from home to the studio and visiting and acknowledging, I know why you couldn't be there for my graduation. And um, her brother died within 3 months of her father dying. Now, this is a family that has always thought their dad is some church going, awesome person who goes out of town for big meetings and on jaunts and everything. Um, in their consciousness, this is what they're thinking, but in Anne's subconscious, she knows her dad's not okay. And a couple of the siblings know this, and her brother. Um, we don't know if her mom is still just operating on front and center. We go to church, so nothing bad can happen. And if it does happen, it's Satan that's doing it, and it's a sin. Um, So the kind of way she was brought up with this really rigorous religious life led to um, her dad being very closeted and keeping secrets. So Anne doesn't believe in keeping secrets. So in her book, Call Me Crazy, she didn't try to defend leaving Ellen because she was abused as a child by a gay man, like some people thought. I mean, when she wrote the book, people were like, okay, so now you're saying you fell out of love with Ellen and you fell in love with a man, and the only reason you were with a woman was because you were molested by a gay man, and the percentage of gay men molesting a girl is really slight. That's what Larry King picked up on the interview. He said, and you say in the book that your dad was molesting you from the age of 3 to 12. She says, yes. And he said, but this is a recovered memory. And why would a gay man want to be with a little girl? And she explains, because he wasn't just a gay man. And it took Larry King a minute, and he was like, oh, so like bisexual. He had a desire to be with men. And she explains he had a sexual deviance where he needed too much sex. So, what I want to say to all the people that don't believe Anne's story is that there was always one child in the family that won't tell. There is always one child, and God, if you're the youngest in the family and you're worshiping your mom and your dad and you're the baby, you're not gonna see, you're not gonna say until you're older. But when Anne was older, she did tell her mother, and her mother said no. Even with herpes in childhood, she said that's you had diaper rash. She was a baby. So what Anne was saying is that for a long time, her memory began at around 18 because of so much that happened. Like if we think back to when AIDS was out in 1983, I mean, her family was having to be tested all the time before they could go to school. Other kids couldn't get near them. They were kind of kept aside and constantly watched. And you could see how she could grow up with a lot of wounds. And I think the thing I found the hardest to understand is that because she crashed and burned, literally in the desert, knocked on a stranger's door and said, God sent me, and just on ecstasy. Why a lot of people can't get past that. I saw the other day people were ragging on Alec Baldwin for sending support and love to Anne. I experienced the same thing. I said, please send prayers to Anne and her family and her friends. And there were people right away that were like, well, have you seen her car, how fast it was going? She's a drunk driver. She's crazy. She's a narcissist, blah, 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 blah. If that was your kid, if that was your house, why not pray for the lady in the house? Oh my God, I am praying for the lady in the house and the owner and her animals. But within less than 24 hours, already $45,000 was raised for a new house. I know it's not the house she chose. I know it's not the house her memories were in. I know she lost some sentimental things and everything, but that's all going to be replaced. Anne is struggling for her life. Her publicist originally said that she was in stable condition, but on a ventilator. That led a lot of people to believe that they put her into a medical coma. No, Anne slipped into a coma after a little while of being in the hospital. She went unconscious. She has severe burns to her torso, which affects her cardiopulmonary system, and severe smoke damage, and severe that requires mechanical ventilation. But she went into the coma herself. She slipped into it herself. So she is still in a coma and on mechanical ventilation, and she is going to require a lot of surgery and a lot of recovery. And I would just ask people, why are we jumping to the worst case scenario that she was drinking vodka because the podcast said they were gifted vodka and they showed them drinking? Look, Anne naturally sounds like she's slurring all the time. Anne is, I'm not even going to get into the what and the why, but I will say she is a fierce advocate for MS. And I've often wondered if Anne has MS, with the kind of slurring that she does. Yeah. People have gone out and gotten video of Heather and Anne leaving a club drunk, inebriated, falling down drunk. Not Anne, Heather. And Anne, like, helping her up. And people standing there taking pictures of her. Not TMZ, gear something, gear grub or whatever. But TMZ, the day of the crash, hovered over Anne to get aerial pictures. Why was TMZ? Why was TMZ all over? Why was Anne going down a residential street? These are the things I want to know that I don't understand. Why was TMZ taking a picture of her and zoning in on what looks like a red top vodka bottle, which doesn't mean she was drinking it. If it was gifted to her, she may have put it in her car there and was driving. Maybe it helped ignite the flames. I don't know. But 5 minutes before the crash, 5 minutes before, she stopped into a salon, a hair salon. And the stylist there said she inquired about a blue wig that she saw. Can I buy that blue wig? It was unavailable. She said, I'll take the red one. She was pleasant. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't high, according to the person that encountered her, the worker there. Stylist, the owner were there. They said she was pleasant. She was normal. She wasn't walking weird. She was making sense. At one point, she did grab the stylist's face and say, did you ever do my hair? And if not, he said, no, but I would love to. And will you take a selfie with me? And he posted it on Instagram within minutes. Then he heard that she was in a crash. What? Like, just down the street. So what makes a car go from normal driving to accelerated speeds, cutting down residential areas and crashing into an apartment complex garage door, backing up and running from it, and still going at that speed, backing up at that speed? And she didn't back up slow, she backed up fast. All the Ring doorbells and security in that area were catching it. But TMZ was right there. My problem is that TMZ immediately went to Heather and Annie were drinking vodka on their podcast. There was a bottle of vodka in her car. Look, we got a picture of it. We obtained footage. What were they doing so close? When Anne's hand is up, like, get away from me. Was Anne trying to outrun TMZ? Was she? Because TMZ, I don't care if they have a little broadcast and they don't have to go splash stuff on a rag newspaper and drive around on motorcycles. They drive around in unmarked cars and SUVs, and they park everywhere celebrities go with their Telelooms little things. And they're always following. And they always jump to the worst case scenario, and then they walk it back as the information comes out. So when I'm following news, do I look at what TMZ says? Yes, because they are always firsties. They're always there. What I want to know is who called TMZ? Who called TMZ? What happened between the hair salon where she was perfectly fine. And now she is racing down the street. And even TMZ, their initial report, they were saying Annie was trying to flee, get off the gurney of the ambulance after they pulled her out. Some people were saying, why was she driving around naked? She wasn't driving around naked. Her clothes were charred to her body. Her, if you've ever seen somebody burnt, her skin was ashen. Her, she was burnt up to her neck. Her hair was black, charred, ashes. And she was still conscious. And they were trying to put claws around her. And anybody that knows anything about burns, you're not going to be able to lay down on the burns. She was sitting up to get, she wasn't trying to run away. She was trying to get up. She was in shock. We don't know. She could have thought the flames were still on her. She was burning. I just don't understand the hate. I don't understand the hate, and that we can't get past. I can, but that so many people can't get past the crash and burn in 2000 when she, oh my God, the crime of leaving Ellen for a man she loved. And then being maybe with a woman again. What is she? Why do we need labels? Why? Okay. Now in Call Me Crazy, she does talk about an alternate world that she created from a child that was with God. It was another planet. It was celestial, and everything good and joyous and bright happened there, and nothing bad. And she started visiting this planet and hearing from this planet, and she was renamed. She became another alter ego called Celestia. And when she was Celestia, she felt bright and joyous and full of energy. But when she was with Ellen, even though she told Ellen about it, she couldn't be Celestia. She had to hide that. And that made her think of her father. And she couldn't be with her friends. And she couldn't be who she was. So here she was fighting for the rights for men and women to be who they truly were in the gay community, and moving them more forward than anybody else ever did. Because Ellen wasn't speaking out. She was like, okay, I'm gay, but Anne was the one that was moving them forward. And Anne took the most hits and the most pain and the most canceling and hate that just continued. And it still does. And I would just ask people to remember that she is a mother, a very good mother, a beautiful woman, a beautiful friend, a motivator. She has entertained people. She's thought of highly in the acting community, so much so that she's votes on I think she's part of the Academy voting or whatever, or the Emmys or Grammys or Golden Globes. She's right up there. She does it all. In Hollywood, she's what you would call a triple threat in a good way, or more. She's done Broadway, acting, dancing. When you can do more than one talent, acting, voiceovers, music, and talent, I would just ask people to be kinder. And I will pray for people I want to, and I will post, I'm praying for Anne. She is struggling for her life, and it's going to be a miracle if she comes through this. And I don't think people realize that. And to just rag on her is not appropriate. It's not. I don't want to be in a world that only looks at your last mistake and what you were back there, when she has come so forward. So she has this alternate place within her that she went to from a child to be safe. And she still, excuse me, at stressy moments goes there. She was never diagnosed DID that we know of, or multiple that we know of, or schizophrenic that we know of, although she identifies with her father's moods when he was having schizophrenic tendencies, which means he could have been schizoaffective. He could have been bipolar with schizoid behavior, schizoid affective disorder. There were many things. She uses the term schizophrenia because it's an older term. But when a person is functioning, but then they go off into these moods of grandiosity and they spend too much and they wheel and deal and they say something they're not and they um, come up with they're bigger and better than they are. They think there's something more grandiose. Um, it can be a delusion that's found in bipolar, and it can also be a delusion that's found in schizophrenia. Um, the I think Anne's using the term of she knows what it's like to live a double life. You have to hide who you really are. So she understood that about her father. Um, I'm I know that her one living sister, Abigail, has said their dad was gay, living a double life, and that he uh, took the family into some hard places with his mental illness too. Mother still won't, the wife, mother still won't, can't fathom how, no, he knows Jesus. My son knew Jesus. This couldn't happen. But Anne is, that's blasphemy. It's a sin. And just, they, I believe they reconciled to a certain extent, but for a long time they just wouldn't see her. And I find that incredibly sad. So I just ask people to remember that every child has a different paradigm, excuse me. And then just quickly in the news, I wanted to talk about Donald Trump for a quick minute and just keep praying for Anne. Please just keep praying, sending good vibes. She's a person with frailties, and she's the first person to be down on herself and never to blame anyone else. And so we don't know. We don't know. She could have had a seizure. She could have had heat stroke. She could have had a MS spasm. She could have had a bee in the car. Yeah, I'm allergic to bees and wasps and hornets. I have a nest right in my house. I have to keep EpiPens around. When I was driving, if a bee got in my car, whew, I would drive into everything to get away from that bee. We don't know. It makes no sense. They're going to do the blood test. We'll find out. But I would hate to see them smear campaign. Oh yeah, her blood alcohol came back because there was vodka in because the podcast they were drinking vodka because a friend sent them vodka. Yeah, okay. Who's the friend that sent them the vodka? What was in the vodka? It's burnt now. We don't know. Because a person got drunk once doesn't mean they get drunk all the time. Because a person crashed and burned once does not mean they do it all the time. We keep putting people into boxes of foreverness and not allowing people to change, to grow, and to evolve. Anne grew and evolved past a lot of tragic childhood. And if anything, what we're seeing now is her child wounds on display. That's all we've ever seen is her child wounds on display, which further validates her story. So please pray for Anne and pray for Amy, who she does. They all live in the same building that became famous for being Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's building in Los Angeles. And they all support each other and are each other's tribe. And um, pray for Heather and Amy and Anne's oldest son and youngest son, um, and just everyone that is her family and loved ones. And I would ask you to please do that. And if you call yourself a Christian, then why not pray? Is it going to hurt you to pray for somebody that we don't know? A tennis ball could have fallen under her, her gas pedal. Her leg could have gone numb. She could have had a stroke. A million things could have happened, and she could have gotten in a situation where she couldn't move her leg. We just don't know. So until we do, and I'll upload this and then it'll come out and say, you know, that she had alcohol in her blood, whatever. I find it highly suspicious that within 5 minutes of driving into a parking lot, walking into a salon perfectly at a normal rate, talking normally, walking normally, being coherent and pleasant, that she would hop in her car and then suddenly be going down streets at speeds that are like a road runner, right? But TMZ was all over her. Just remember, they're not on motorcycles like when they chased Princess Diana to death. The anniversary coming up for that, and Dodi Fayed and her driver. They're not on motorcycles, but they're still there. And who are the people that are really problematic? Who are the people that are really mentally not well? If you go look at some of these gear grub photographers just zooming in on Heather and Anne coming out of a club trying to walk, and they're like, please, I've asked you for privacy to stop. I I wouldn't want to be a celebrity or a high profile person trying to drive around Los Angeles or anywhere. These people, this is their fix. Oh, let's catch them doing something. Let's catch them being naughty. Let's catch anyone doing anything wrong. Let's be Firsty. That's their drug. Who's the drug addict? TMZ, rag sheets, gear grub, whatever. They're the ones with the problems. They're the problem. They're the ones that constantly need for the money, right? So who's narcissistic? Who's narcissistic? Photographers that chase celebrities like their hunt. That's who. Okay, now about Donald Trump. I don't find it unusual at all that there's search warrants and seizures of his properties because I don't know of any other president that ever took White House material off the grounds other than to Camp David. Donald Trump from the beginning said Mar-a-Lago is going to be his southern weekend White House. He was going to spend he wasn't going to stay at the White House. He was going to go between New Jersey and Mar-a-Lago. And he always conducted business, and between Trump towers, everywhere he had a tower. So it makes sense if there really is documents in a toilet and he walked out with 16 boxes, that it's not just all souvenirs and photographs from being a president, that some documents are in there that a judge wants to see. It's not a witch hunt. It's not something horrible happening. It's a search. If they don't find what they're looking for, they'll put it all back. And I just wonder why it took so long, because any other president would have happened to too. Okay, number 3 in the news. A lot of people are still storing up food, and I really had to look at my own life and say, what broke me? What did I use my stimulus check on? Fear. I went into, oh, yeah, I better not go out. I better order takeout in. I better not go to the grocery store and buy too much because I better order takeout in. I better, everything was have your food delivered, instant shop, don't go to the grocery store. What the amount of money that people have spent on food to store up now is absolutely absurd. Um, and then to have to be in a lockdown or a pause or just keep your safe space and be eating food that we don't normally eat. If you don't normally eat canned goods and you're got boxes full of canned goods, eventually they're going to go bad. If you got boxing, eventually, if especially if you don't have a cool, dry place where they are, um, eventually you're going to start going into your pandemic food, which I said in another video, I'm just not doing it again. It's silly, it's stupid. There is not going to be a food shortage. If there is, it's going to be the inflation stuff. So the only thing I'm buying extra is when I see something on sale, that is a ridiculous price that I can't afford. I'm going to buy it on sale. But to keep stocking up to lock down, or for the power grid to go out, or for wheat grain to be shorted, or whatever, or I mean, you always have your storm box of food. Um, I have a little shoe box that I've always kept a couple of cans flip top for my cat when they're sleeping. There he is. I've always kept, oh yeah, these are my bed partners, knitting, crocheting, books, um, and my cat. I've I've always had like a boot box that I have in there masks, um, um, lip balm. I don't know why lip balm, but just so your lips don't dry out, I guess. A few cough drops, throat drops, um, a little bit of medicine supplies, first like a first aid kit, cat food, and a few of those boxes of like chicken spread with crackers, and you can just flip open the uh, foil top, and it's got a little like ice cream spoon that you can spread on your crackers, tuna, buffalo chicken, light tuna, oil chicken, white tuna, ham spread, turkey spread. They sell them everywhere at the Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, Aldi's, Wegmans, Top. They sell them everywhere in different brands. And they're just these little boxes of little can of meat salad that they last up to 2 years, stored properly. So uh, I've always kept those, and some gum, water, and my important papers if I had to run. That I think that's about it. That's all I'm gonna do. Um, and here's a question I always find myself asking about Christians that are still storing up, people that believe we're in the last days. Well, the Bible tells us in the last days people would be storing up, but they would still be running around making merry. And you can look all this up. Revelation, Daniel, Ezekiel. In the latter days, people will be storing up foods. There will be rumors of plagues, wars, and all kinds of pestilence and disease again. And so I do believe we are in the latter days. But the storing up, they don't tell us, should we have stored up? Because if we truly believe that we're Christians and we're going to get raptured, we're going to get taken away before, we're going to go through some real tribulation, but our eternal life is with God in heaven, and we know Jesus, and we know the Lord, and we have the Holy Spirit in us, and we've given our life to God, then why are we still storing up? What are we trying to survive? For all the right-wing preppers, really right wing that are prepped to the max, like they're going to be the Walking Dead and survive. Like, I think you've watched too much Survivor or Lost or whatever. Because what are you storing up for and prepping for? To live forever on an earth that's God is destroying to make a new kingdom? So, if God is a God of natural consequences or instant karma, this is the natural consequence of us not tending the garden, earth. That's all we were told to do, is love your neighbor, do unto others as you would like yourself. Don't covet, don't, the big ones. Don't, just, just don't go out and save the world. You don't have to save the world. Just occupy. Occupy what? Do what? Keep busy. Keep talking about God. Keep doing what you can, where you can. But then, why are we storing up? For what? You're going to be the last man on earth and have your canned soup that you can open up, your Vienna sausage and your Spam? What are you trying to save your family from? If you all know the Lord, and this is the natural consequences, and this is what we're seeing unfold, and this is prophecy being fulfilled, and it is latter days, and it is, because the generation that saw Israel become a nation in 1948 will not have left this earth. That is my mother and father's generation. My dad is 90. They will still be on the earth when this all begins. Thank God my dad is still here. My aunts and all, like some of my aunts are still here, and some of my uncles. So if you were here in 1948 and you saw, and you're still here, you're going to be here when things start to go to the new kingdom, a new world. And call it New World Order, call it a paradise, call it a kingdom, call it a rapture, whatever. You're safe in the arms of God if you know God. Now, what is knowing God? Is knowing God going to church? Is knowing God reading the Bible and a bunch of holy books? Is knowing God having ministries and doing good? No. Knowing God is talking to God every day and having a relationship with God, then waiting to listen, communing with God every day. Exactly what Adam and Eve did in the beginning. They fellowshipped with God. Relationship. It is not about a relationship with your church. Nothing wrong with fellowshipping, having a spiritual community. It is about starting your day every day and ending your day every day and checking in all day. God, Holy Spirit, move through me. Holy Spirit, confirm. It is a union with God. That's what Anne Heche has, a union with God. She may not call it God because of the religiosity that was so much to her detriment as a young girl, but a spiritual higher power, right? So when I say pray, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about just go to whoever you understand God higher than you to be and ask, please send your angels. And when you see all the noise about Donald Trump, Biden, COVID, all this and that, there's always going to be something in this world. This is not a perfect world. It's not supposed to be a perfect world. In a perfect world, it would be a perfect world. A perfect world is not coming until a new kingdom comes, God's government. We are in a systemically rotted system. The government is rotted. The churches are rotted, including all the mega churches that people feel good praising. And you go to church to feel good, to praise God. That's emotionalism. It can lift your spirits, but it's emotionalism. So check that. Just check that. All the things we think is what I'm thinking about. I wonder why right-wing Christians are storing up food and supplies, or even conservative Christians, or even just Christians. Enough for 3 weeks, you're okay. But for a lifetime, to outlive the planet? No, you're going against what the plan is, to get to heaven and then rebuild the earth and put it back into the condition that was God's original creation. We'll be working. We'll be working. We better get to loving gardening, because we'll be digging and rebuilding. And so everybody have a nice day, and please just keep your eyes on God, and please let's not hate so much, and let's not look for a label for everything, and let's try to move past a person's last mistake or what they were most famous for in their wrongdoing. Okay. Take care. Thanks for joining me. I know this was a long video. I really had a lot of questions about that. Just, it bothered me. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.